This is my video project for messages and mailings. Now, what I wanted to do in this video was to actually demonstrate how I'd three-dimensionally constructed my large-scale paper fabrics. Now, probably the only criticism I would have had with going large-scale, as previously mentioned, they were bigger than the size of a door. They didn't necessarily take long periods of time to do or to complete, but obviously had to do an array and a selection of them so that I could select and sort the best and the worst, so the good successful samples and the not so successful samples. Anyway, the intention with this fabric, these paper fabrics, obviously at this point they are sustainable, so I wanted to then translate, using my knowledge up to this point, my inspiration and the learning that I gained from contemporary practice working with artefacts, was to make a translation of the paper fabrics into the direction of masks. Now, I'd followed a process where I'd gone through some drawing, produced some images of my own face, and then this led to developing these ideas from various sources and looking at research that I'd previously done early on in the assignment. So I'd created my own characters, if you like. Now, these characters all came together three-dimensionally with the idea of a mask, and then this developed into a textile warrior. So what I'm going to do is just show you a selection of the masks that I've put together. Basically, they are simple as simple. I just cut up a paper bag, use that as a pattern, and then constructed these masks with a staple gun and hand stitching. So as we can see here, it's got all the textures and the colour palette. They have a front and a back, so the imagery is varied with the face. I didn't really kind of think, even though I had put into place the planning that I'd made in my sketchbook and the direction that I was going to go, but I did actually allow the paper fabrics to do all the talking, because once they started to be dissected into patterns ready for masks, they kind of just led the way, really. So I just didn't want to enforce too much control on these, because the work had already been done by producing the large scale fabric. So as we can see, I've put together different types. Now, because of the concept came for the idea of a textile warrior, I then started to think about armour. Now, this had a connection with the process that I was undergoing at the moment with my assessment on dyslexia, and the idea of a textile warrior, the idea of a mask, hiding behind the mask, and then I'd started to think about conjuring the idea of armour to protect myself. So three-dimensionally I produced, again with the paper fabrics, a breastplate which is actually worn in one of my videos. In the video I do actually return to the woods where the artwork was originally displayed. The masks and some of the elements of the textile warrior were displayed on the trees as pieces of art. Then I laid down the elements of the textile warrior as if he was a found artefact, and then I did some video footage of me actually wearing the textile warrior outfit, an array of the masks, to demonstrate the idea of the fabric, making the translation into a mask, generating ideas of movement, a possible warrior dance, but still maintaining the strong idea of the connotations of dyslexia and how it can make somebody feel. So I wanted also to turn it around into a positive connotation, so that dyslexia is now demonstrating a broad spectrum of how creative we are as textile practitioners. All of these ideas were actually very successful, and it was quite fun making the video. The other concept and the other idea that I came up with was to give the warrior a shield. So that would also become a piece of art. And what I then did was, when I returned home, I then put together the warrior on a dressmaker's dummy, so that I could actually take photographs and then bring together more of the ideas that now the imagery, the three-dimensional pieces, the fabric that I'd made would then be stored in a museum archive as an artefact or in a display cabinet. So I did a selection of photographs which actually demonstrated this. Again, it was to bring together ideas and also to show and demonstrate my understanding and my learning of this part of the assignment for contemporary practice, working with artefacts. Now, another idea that I did want to fulfil within this theme of dyslexia, the project started to become quite emotional, quite in depth, and it had made me realise that it had been going on for a very long time with the dyslexia. So this came about researching and reading more of my school reports. So I literally photocopied the school reports, and they became large-scale pieces of paper fabric. And then I've also used materials like school ink and bleached to reminisce, as I remember using school ink with a fountain pen at school, to bring that connotation through. And this started to engage within the assignment, and it also changed the colour palette slightly. Again, we used the three-dimensional construction with the mask, which was worn, and then this enabled me to bring the element of my drawings of my faces, possibly anger, possible sadness, with the writings of the comments made on school reports by teachers at that point in my learning at school, which seemed quite negative. But I didn't necessarily let this bog me down, because I have now, or contemporary practice has actually turned everything around for me, so it's all become really positive for the fact that I'm not an academic writer, but I am very creative. But I do actually now see making video footage is just as academic as anything that's written down on a piece of paper. So just to continue slightly more with the fabric, I then turned some of the large scale samples. This was a particular favourite with the school reports, the writings. That became a cape for the warrior. And then one of the final ideas was to invent, well not invent, but to generate and create some kites of my own imagery, the faces that I'd drawn, some photographs from when I was a youngster at school. I don't think practically these will work because the paper is too heavy for them to fly as a kite. But the idea behind the concept of the kite is for me to let go of the fears that dyslexia created through my schooling years, college years, and with my OCA learning over the past 6 years. And I've generated the idea that the kites will just fly and just let go of all the pressure and the negativity that this has created. So with the paper fabrics, I then started to generate a collection of the kite. It's been strengthened out as I studied an actual kite sample, and as we can see, this was actually, if possible, could fly. Another thing that I did learn as well, it would need to be made into nylon fabrics just to make it a little bit lighter. So I engaged in learning about the advantages and disadvantages of certain fabric types and so forth. All of this information is quite detailed and recorded on my blog. There's an array of sample after sample, but I think it's just the way that I work with my creativity I just like to demonstrate of how much I enjoy the creative work that in OCA enables me to generate. And contemporary practice has really been an exciting journey, and I have learnt so much about materials, traditional values. Probably the only thing that I would regret that I will need to follow up is I want to go back with words and meaning, because I think this has been an emotional roller coaster which I never really engage in with my work and talk about emotion, because I see the textile practice as being very experimental and playful. But this did actually bring out a lot of emotion, and I think the biggest emotion was when you actually delve into your own personal archive of family and friends that we've lost over the years, and the recorded documentation of school reports from past times, which I do need to follow up with. My point is, I do actually want to go back, take the project back to the cemetery and make rubbings of family relatives and friends of their gravestones, because some of the wording on these gravestones is quite hard hitting with, memories of, and headstones talk about dates, names, connotations of the past, the present, and I think also that they are the future, and I think that they are the future of art and textile practice. And I have learned that it's been quite important to have meanings and messages within our own private work. I think it's just important to kind of either quietly or boldly express these feelings. So thank you for the journey on contemporary practice, and I hope you enjoy these videos, my blog, my sketchbook, and my textile practice.